Why every civilization makes the same mistake about women. A young woman sits in front of a camera in a spotless kitchen. She has long brown hair, an innocent smile, and a prairie dress suggesting she may churn butter immediately after filming. Fresh bread cools behind her. Sunlight pours through the windows. Everything communicates simplicity, stability, and a life untouched by Slack notifications. Then she looks into the camera and explains that modern women have been deceived. They should not pursue independence. They should submit to their husbands, raise children, and spend the evening reading their God Bless the USA Bible. Millions watch. Advertising revenue flows into accounts she controls. Employees are just off screen, ready to edit the footage. Brand partnerships are negotiated. Beeswax, diaper balm, and fermenting Crocs fly off the shelves of her online store. A sophisticated media company grows around the message that women should not pursue sophisticated careers. The lifestyle is traditional. The business model has a conversion funnel. This may look like a uniquely modern contradiction, but it's not. Civilizations have been performing versions of this for thousands of years. They depend on women's labor while minimizing it. They benefit from women's intelligence while questioning it. They create restrictions that make achievement difficult, then point to the absence of achievement as proof that the restrictions were justified. First, women were denied education. Then their lack of scholarship is called natural. They're excluded from politics. Then their lack of political experience is treated as evidence that they can't govern. They are prevented from owning businesses. Then their dependence is presented as a biological preference. It's a remarkably effective system. Remove the latter, then notice that fewer women reach the roof. Then publish a philosophical treatise explaining that women dislike heights. Again and again, civilizations have complained about shortages of workers, leaders, scientists, entrepreneurs, and problem solvers while deliberately reducing the contributions of half their population. The question is not why this happened once. The question is why intelligent societies keep repeating it. And to understand that, we have to examine democracy, imperial China, footbinding, medical science, and one of humanity's favorite psychological tricks, turning a social arrangement into a law of nature. Chapter 1. How custom becomes nature. Human beings rarely describe their own customs as a temporary requirement. We describe them as natural. This is convenient because natural requires no further explanation. If men possess property and women do not, then that's natural. If men receive education and women do not, that is natural. If men speak in public while women remain silent, nature has apparently arranged the seating chart for us. Many restrictions on women began not as theories about intelligence, but as attempts to control inheritance. Once agriculture allowed families to accumulate fields, livestock, grain, and permanent wealth, a new question became urgent. Who receives all this when I die? And how do I know that the heirs are mine? Paternity could not be genetically verified, so societies tried to verify it behaviorally. For the first time, they restricted women's sexuality, supervised courtship, controlled marriage, limited movement, elevated chastity into a family asset. The original concern was not necessarily that women were useless, it's that women were socially indispensable. Their marriages created alliances. Their children continued bloodlines. Their labor supported households. Their choices affected inheritance. Women were not controlled because they didn't matter. They were controlled because they mattered enormously. The problem was that rules created for inheritance rarely stayed limited to inheritance. A practical concern became a moral principle. The moral principle became a religious expectation. The religious expectation became a theory of female nature. Eventually, nobody remembered the original problem. They simply knew respectable women did not own property. They didn't travel freely, study philosophy, speak publicly, or ask why every rule seemed to have been drafted by the same demographic. A guardrail became a cage. Then the cage was cited as evidence that the person inside it couldn't run. Chapter 2. Athens invents democracy. In 5th century Athens, citizens gathered to debate the future of their city. They argued over war, justice, taxation, law, empire, and freedom. Athens produced philosophy, theater, historical writing, monumental architecture, and one of the most influential political experiments in human history, democracy. For men, specifically citizen men. Women could not vote in the assembly. They could not hold political office. Respectable Athenian women were generally expected to remain closely connected to the household. This created a wonderfully flexible definition of universal freedom. It applied universally to a fairly specific group. Then Aspasia arrived. She came from Miletus, a Greek city on the coast of Asia Minor, and became the companion of Pericles, Athens' most powerful political leader. Aspasia is difficult to reconstruct because most surviving descriptions were written by men, often hostile ones, and some came from comedy. Others appeared in philosophical dialogues written years later. She was accused of running a brothel. She was blamed for influencing Pericles. She was portrayed as a teacher of rhetoric. Plato's Menexenus jokingly associates her with Pericles' famous funeral speech and presents her as someone capable of teaching eloquence even to Socrates. How much of this was true remains uncertain, but the uncertainty itself tells us something. The Athenians found the idea of an intellectually and politically influential woman believable enough to joke about her, fear, and attack. Aspasia became threatening not because she officially held power. She couldn't. She became threatening because she appeared capable of participating in a world defined as male. And that's a recurring historical pattern. A society declares that a group is naturally unsuited for a role. Then a member of that group performs the role successfully. The society now has two options. It can reconsider the rule, or it can declare the successful person unnatural, immoral, foreign, manipulative, sexually suspicious, or simply an exception. Human beings strongly prefer the exception strategy. It's much cheaper than updating an entire worldview. Aspasia was foreign-born, intellectually connected, publicly discussed, and associated with the most powerful man in Athens. So instead of asking whether Athenian assumptions about women might be incomplete, critics could explain her away. She's not evidence. She was a scandal. That's how civilizations protect theories from reality. Every contradiction receives a special label. The woman who cannot lead proves the rule. The woman who leads successfully is extraordinary. The man who succeeds demonstrates male capacity. The woman who succeeds demonstrates that one unusually gifted woman succeeded. Reality is placed in a small display cage marked exception. Athens gave the world democratic philosophy while excluding women from democracy. It argued endlessly about human excellence while refusing to test for excellence in much of its population. Athens could question the nature of justice. It simply had difficulty questioning the guest list. Chapter 3. The Woman Who Completed Imperial History. Around the year 100 BCE, during China's Han Dynasty, an elderly scholar was summoned to the imperial court. Her name was Ban Zhao. She came from an extraordinary literary family. Her father, Ban Biao, had begun writing a vast history of the Han Dynasty. Her brother, Ban Gu, continued the project. Then Ban Gu became entangled in court politics, was imprisoned, and died before finishing it. The imperial government now had a problem. One of the most important historical works in China remained incomplete. It needed someone with the education, judgment, discipline, and access necessary to finish it. The court chose Ban Zhao. She worked with the imperial archives. She completed major portions of the Book of Han. She became respected as a scholar and was invited to teach women of the imperial household. Powerful people sought her knowledge. Ban Zhao was living proof that a woman could master literature, history, politics, and scholarship at the highest level. She also wrote lessons for women. The text advised women to be humble, industrious, obedient, and deferential to their husbands. This sounds contradictory, and it was. But it was not a simple contradiction. Ban Zhao also argued that girls should be educated. Families taught boys to read while neglecting daughters, even though women were expected to manage households, raise children, preserve family relationships, and navigate demanding social rules. Her solution was not modern equality. It was better preparation for women inside the system she knew. And this is often how change begins. Not with someone leaping completely outside the assumptions of an era, but someone discovering that the assumptions no longer fit together. Women must be wise, but should not receive serious education. Women must manage complex households, but are intellectually inferior. Women must teach children, but do not need to be taught. That logic works beautifully as long as nobody says it aloud. Ban Zhao's life reveals another recurring pattern. Societies frequently make exceptions when they need talent. Officially, women may be unsuited to scholarship, but if the imperial history needs finishing, perhaps one exceptionally capable woman can enter the archive. Women may be excluded from administration, but when a royal household, family estate, medical practice, or business needs competent management, the rules become surprisingly flexible. Civilization is often most egalitarian during emergencies. The moment a ship begins sinking, everyone becomes intensely interested in whether the woman nearby knows how to repair boats. Then the crisis passes, the old theories return. This is one reason unequal systems can survive for so long. They do not need to be completely rigid. They merely need to be rigid enough to preserve the hierarchy and flexible enough to borrow excluded talent when absolutely necessary. Ban Zhao could become one of the greatest scholars of her age. That did not mean other girls received her opportunities. An exception may prove a rule false. It does not automatically remove the rule. Sometimes it even helps preserve it. A civilization can point proudly to one successful woman while ensuring that very few others receive the same chance. It's an ancient institutional strategy. Today, we call it diversity brochure. Chapter 4. The Status Trap. Sometime around the 10th century, a fashion emerged among elite women in China. Girls' feet were tightly wrapped to prevent normal growth. Over time, bones could be compressed and deformed. Walking became difficult. Pain could become permanent. The tiny foot was called a golden lotus. It became associated with refinement, beauty, discipline, and high social status. Then the practice spread. Imagine being the mother of a young daughter. You know binding her feet will hurt her. You also know that leaving them unbound may damage her marriage prospects. The decision is cruel. It's also understandable. This is how destructive customs survive. They don't require everyone to believe that they're good. They require everyone to believe that everyone else will continue rewarding them. A family that refused might pay the price alone. A family that complied could tell itself there was no real choice. Millions of private decisions reinforced a system many participants may have hated. Footbinding is often described as proof that people in the past were irrational. That's a little too comforting. The individuals were responding to incentives. Marriage mattered, status mattered, family reputation, and a daughter's future mattered. The irrationality existed at the level of the system. Individually sensible decisions produced a collectively monstrous result. Human beings are very good at this. We build status competitions, attach prestige to costly behavior, then interpret the willingness to endure the cost as evidence of virtue. For elite families, a woman who did not need to perform heavy labor could signal wealth through reduced mobility. Pain became elegance. Disability became refinement. Restriction became respectability. And once the custom acquired moral and aesthetic language, intelligence could not destroy it. Intelligence even defended it. Sophisticated people developed sophisticated explanations for why the existing arrangement was proper. That may be the most dangerous thing about intelligence. It doesn't merely help us discover truth. It helps us write extremely persuasive memoranda explaining why whatever benefits our group is also natural, beautiful, civilized, and possibly endorsed by heaven. China during the centuries of footbinding produced immense achievements in literature, engineering, commerce, printing, and administration. A civilization can be advanced in one area and astonishingly destructive in another. Progress does not arrive as a complete package. A society can invent movable type and still bind a little girl's feet. Footbinding survived because female limitation became a status product. People at the top gained distinction. People below imitated them. Parents transmitted the custom. Institutions rationalized it, and eventually suffering began to look like tradition. And tradition is often just peer pressure from dead people. Chapter 5. The Discovery That Lost Its Discoverer. In 1915, a young chemist named Alice Ball arrived at the College of Hawaii. She was 23 years old. She became the institution's first woman and first black graduate to earn a master's degree in chemistry. At the time, leprosy, now called Hansen's disease, carried enormous fear and stigma. In Hawaii, patients could be forcibly separated from their families and sent to the remote settlement at Kalaupapa on Molokai. One of the few available treatments came from chalmugra oil. The oil had been used for centuries, but it was difficult to administer. Taken orally, it caused severe nausea. Applied to the skin, it was unreliable. Injected directly, it was thick, painful, and poorly absorbed. Alice Ball solved the chemical problem. She developed a method of isolating compounds from the oil and converting them into a form that could be injected and absorbed more efficiently. The treatment became known as the Ball method, except for a time it wasn't called that. Ball became ill and died in 1916. She was only 24. She had not yet published the complete procedure. Arthur Dean, the president of the college and a chemist, continued the work and published the treatment without properly crediting her. It began to be called the Dean method. A young woman solved a major medical problem, then she died. Then a senior man's name appeared on the solution. History has created many elaborate systems for underestimating women. Taking their work and changing the label is one of the most efficient. Physician Harry Holman, who had encouraged Ball's research, later objected and publicly credited her contribution, but for decades her role remained obscure. The treatment she developed helped patients until newer therapies appeared in the 1940s. Alice Ball's story demonstrates that the cost of discrimination is not simply unfairness to the excluded person. The cost is corrupted information. When achievement is credited inaccurately, societies begin to draw false conclusions about where ability exists. A woman contributes to a family workshop, but the husband's name appears on the business. A woman performs calculations for a scientist, but the scientist receives the reputation. A woman develops an idea in a laboratory, but a senior colleague publishes it. A woman writes under a male name because publishers and readers treat authority as masculine. Her achievement disappears as evidence of female ability. The historical records then appear to confirm that women rarely achieve anything. The evidence was not merely incomplete. The process that created the evidence was biased. This is the perfect self-sealing system. Exclude women from institutions, fail to record their unofficial contributions, credit some of their achievements to men, then open the surviving archive and announce that history clearly demonstrates male superiority. This is not research. It's returning to the scene of your own administrative error and treating the paperwork as forensic evidence. The deeper loss is impossible to measure. We know Alice Ball's name because she succeeded despite the barriers and because someone eventually recovered her story. We do not know the names of the girls who never entered laboratories, the women who never learned to read, the inventors who never controlled enough property to build a prototype, the physicians who possessed insight but no credentials. History records the person who reaches the finish line. It doesn't record everyone prevented from entering the race. Civilizations are excellent at counting what exists, but they're terrible at counting what their own rules prevented from existing. Chapter 6. The Prairie-Dress Paradox. Now return to the modern kitchen. The bread's ready. The lighting is flawless. The message is ancient. The analytics are real-time. Modern traditional womanhood content often presents itself as an escape from modern systems, but it exists because of modern systems. Smartphones, global platforms, digital payments, online retail, independent bank accounts, legal rights to own property and create businesses. The women telling other women not to pursue independence may be exercising more economic independence than nearly any woman in history. That does not automatically make her dishonest. Human beings do not experience contradiction as painfully as philosophers imagine. We can believe our own independence is necessary while other people's independence is socially destructive. We can build a career teaching women that careers are a mistake. Civilization contains many similar arrangements. Celebrities warn against seeking attention. Politicians denounce elites from reserved airport lounges. Billionaires explain that money cannot buy happiness using exceptionally expensive microphones. The contradiction is not the most important part. The important question is why the message attracts an audience. Modern life is exhausting. Families feel overworked, economically insecure, and socially isolated. Parenting can feel like a private emergency conducted in between emails. Childcare is expensive. Housing is expensive. Employment is unstable. Technology has made everyone reachable and fewer people available. Under those conditions, the image of a simple household becomes deeply appealing. One parent earns, other parent cares for the home. Children grow up surrounded by family. Loaves of bread have never seen a plastic bag. There's real wisdom inside parts of that vision. Children need quality time with their caregivers. Families need commitment. Communities need stability. Human beings need relationships that are not optimized for productivity. The mistake is assuming these goods require female dependence. A strong family is not the same thing as a powerless wife. Caregiving is not the same thing as economic vulnerability. Commitment is not the same thing as submission. History's recurring error is not valuing motherhood. Motherhood is valuable. It's not valuing domestic work. Domestic work is necessary. The error is turning one valuable role into a compulsory definition of female nature. The moment a society says women may only do this, it stops honoring the role and begins enforcing it. And dependence works beautifully when the person holding power remains loving, healthy, solvent, loyal, and alive. History suggests these conditions should not be treated as a permanent administrative guarantee. A husband can become ill, a marriage can become abusive, a business can fail, a spouse can die, a war can begin. Civilizations that leave women without education, property, experience, or legal autonomy do not create stronger families. They create families with a single point of failure. Engineers try to avoid this. Social theorists occasionally call it tradition. Conclusion: remove the ladder. Every civilization creates a story explaining where talent lives. Athens placed political judgment inside male citizens. Imperial Chinese bureaucracies placed scholarship inside educated men. Aristocracies placed leadership inside hereditary families. And that pattern extends far beyond women. People who control institutions routinely mistake access for ability. They open the gate for their own group, observe that their own group occupies the garden, then conclude that horticulture must be hereditary. The mistake about women is one version of a much larger human error. We confuse the results of systems with the qualities of people. A person given education appears intelligent. A person denied education appears ignorant. A person given authority develops leadership experience. A person excluded from authority appears inexperienced. The system creates the outcome, then pretends merely to have measured it. The greatest cost cannot be found in a law book. It's hidden in everything that never happened. The book never written, the medicine never discovered, the business never created, reform never proposed, the gifted child never educated. A civilization does not receive an invoice marked 10 million undeveloped minds. It simply becomes poorer, slower, and less capable than it might have been. Then it looks around for an explanation. Labor shortages, weak leadership, foreign competition, a lack of innovation, people don't want to work. Almost anything except the possibility that it spent centuries preventing capable people from contributing fully. The lesson is not that every traditional role is oppressive. It's not that every modern arrangement is wise. And it's not that men and women must make identical choices. The lesson is simpler. Civilizations should become extremely suspicious whenever they claim to know in advance what millions of people are incapable of doing, because the sequence is remarkably consistent. First, society limits opportunity. Then it mistakes the resulting inequality for natural difference. Then an Aspasia, a Ben Zhao, and Alice Ball slip through. She performs the supposedly impossible task. The civilization calls her exceptional. Another follows, then another. Eventually, the exceptions form a pattern too large to ignore, and everyone begins explaining that the old rules were simply products of their time, as though people living under those rules had not spent centuries pointing out exactly what was wrong with them. Civilizations flourish when they become good at discovering talent. They stagnate when they become too confident they already know where talent lives. History has tested both strategies, and the results are not subtle. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see when I make more. I make these videos totally for free, and your support really helps the channel grow. You can also share this with someone you think will like it, check out the Amazon links to cool stuff in the description, and tip me if you feel so inclined. Venmo at History of Human Nature. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.